what has our favourite Chinese multi-hyphenate international man of mystery been up to this week? Find out on the Wang Yibo Weekly. This time last week, Yibo was in Paris, or at least posting about Paris. It's very unclear when he left Paris, but he did post last Wednesday on Instagram twice. Once he posted some stuff from the Chanel show, and then he also posted a more personal one with a couple of selfies and some of photos that he'd taken himself while he was in Paris. So that was a little bit fun. It's always lovely to get a selfie and to get something that's a little bit less corporate-y of Yibo's personal accounts. So that was lovely. The other thing that happens when Yibo is away, I have noticed, is that he's often more active on Instagram when he's overseas, and he's, I think, a little bit less guarded, it seems to me, on Instagram nowadays than he is on his Chinese social media nowadays. Well, like 10 years ago, he was like all over the place on his Chinese social media, like, because he wasn't that big of a public figure, and also he was a lot younger. And in some ways, like, it's not to the same extent, but in some ways when he's on Instagram, I feel like you get he's a little bit less perfectionist. He's stuff that he does, which is nice for us, for the fans, for our parasocials. One thing, however, that reportedly happened on Instagram for Wang Yibo the past week, which did in fact, start all sorts of flame wars back in China, is that it is claimed, at any rate, with screenshots, but I don't know, I have no way of knowing if it's real or not, but it's claimed that Yibo went on Instagram, scrolled through posts on a CP fan site, so a Wang Yibo Xiaojian fan site, and that caused a few ructions back in China, but presumably Yibo couldn't care less, because that's always seems to be the way with him. It shows no signs of being bothered by any of that nonsense, so good for him. It is certainly an enormously funny thing that happened. On Saturday, there was a post announcing his racing initial schedule and announcing his sponsorship arrangements for the racing for this year, because of course Eversu, who was his major racing sponsor last year, is no longer with him. So it was posted from Beijing, and we'll come back to this later, but I at the time went, oh, he's back in China on Saturday, so, which is fine. Like, he'd finished all his work in Europe, he's back in China. It was co-created, that post, with the three sponsors, so I'm not 100% certain now if that means he was in Beijing then, which is what the post said. But anyway, it was an announcement that he will be racing in the GT competition in China. The first race is on the 18th and 19th. First race meet 18th and 19th of April. And his sponsors are, or his, I'll tell you about the language. the people that the announcement was co-made with was Red Bull, who he has announced as his chief energy officer, Undefeated, which is a new brand. It's an American streetwear brand, and they were announced as the official trend officer, and Helly Hansen announced as the co-creation officer. Now, the phrasing of the announcement was interesting. It looks like he's not associated with Yuno any longer. Yuno wasn't mentioned in any way. So the signage from Eversu had disappeared, but he was still with Yuno Racing Team. But this this announcement didn't say anything about Uno, and as far as I can tell, Uno didn't cross-post it. So I think the signs point to Yibo has got his own racing team now. So he's not racing with anybody else. He's racing by himself. He's the boss of it, in some sort of sense. And because he is running it, rather than him endorsing brands like it normally is and them giving him titles like, brand ambassador or something, he is being endorsed by other people. So the brand relationship is the other way around, and he's giving them titles. This whole deal trended on Weibo, and everybody thought that was hilarious, that, other people get given titles by brands, but Yibo is giving brands titles. And yes, that was a thing that happened, and that was on Saturday. The other thing that happened on the weekend is Oliver June, who has been Yibo's photographer for a number of shoots recently. In fact, he's she. Yeah, I think it's a she. She has been the photographer who has done a lot of his magazine covers and stuff like that of recent times. And she was the one doing all of the photos for all of the brands, as far as I can tell, while he was in Paris. Oliver June was shooting for other people as well, because during Fashion Week, I followed them on Weibo, and they put stuff up about other people as well. But anyway, they, on their own personal, social media accounts, put out a bunch of extra photos, including the now notorious white turtleneck shot, which I'm going to put up here. So this shot caused a bit of a flap on the Chinese internet as well. So I'm sure you can all see why. What else happened this week? I've been flying around it. I was talking about it in roundabout terms. Yesterday morning, early morning, Yibo arrived back in China. So as I said, on the weekend, this post went out. I assumed that he was back, and we just hadn't heard about his flights because that sometimes happens. But no, he flew back in early yesterday morning, and the flight he came in on was a Geneva-Beijing flight. So at some point, he was in Switzerland, and nobody seems to know why or what he was doing, whether it was just a transit through there from somewhere else, what any of that is about. Hopefully, who knows, if there's something good to know, hopefully it will come to light at some point in the future. But that was a little bit exciting. The only other news really from this week is that it was reported yesterday that a bunch of portrait rights cases that Wang Yibo's been suing people, basically, and it came to court yesterday. A number of different companies who have used his likeness for promotion without permission, and there was a bunch of different companies named in this filing that was reported on yesterday. So go get him, go get them. And now let's turn to brand stuff. So no enormous news. It's a little bit of a relief after, last week being all everything. Francie put out some stuff, put out a photo edit for Arbor Day with trees and stuff. They also put one out for White Valentine's Day. In Asia generally, Valentine's Day, as in February 14th, has become a day for women to give gifts to guys they're interested in generally. And then the 14th of March, which is 1 month later, is known as White Valentine's Day. And that is for men to give reciprocal gifts. So if you got given something in February, you give something back in March. That's what White Day or White Valentine's Day is. And anyway, Francie put out a post for White Valentine's Day. Other things, Master Kong Iced Tea put out a new, they've put out a whole new line, which is low GI and half sugar, and it's sort of like a health version. And they put out some photos with yibo with the new products. One of them comes in duck shit fragrance is the translation, and I thought that must be like just an artifact of machine translation. But no, there is apparently actually a quite famous style of oolong tea called duck shit tea or duck shit fragrance tea, and it's quite sought after apparently, and the more you know. So that was a thing that happened. Tempo put out a new product, which is, I think it might be a limited edition thing for spring, and it's Sakura, like cherry blossom fragrance. So smelly tissues. That's a thing that happened, and they put out a picture with yibo. What else? Big Demon King or Da Mo Wang, the snack brand that he started with not that long ago, has just announced that their products are now for sale in a number of places in Europe and in the UK. So for anybody in the Europe or UK, have a look around. And finally, there is a new endorsement on the way. Apparently, according to something I read yesterday, the teasers are going to start coming out today, and like in the next week, we should actually get a lot more information. It's a cleaning products brand. But we'll be talking about that next week if that comes to fruition. So won't go into any further detail about that now. So in terms of what to look forward to in the future, we've got the racing coming up in April. All of the tickets to the first day have now sold out. They actually sold out last year. It's the race, the race that's been announced is at the Shanghai International Circuit, which is where they had the China F1 like in the last week. It's a really big circuit, but when the GT races go, they normally don't open up all of the stands. And last year it sold out without all of the stands open because they didn't sell tickets to everywhere. This year they've opened a whole new section, and it's still sold out. In fact, it sold out, the first day sold out within 48 hours of yibo's announcement post that he was going to be there. From what I've heard, the second day, because there was 2 days, the second day last I heard, there were still some seats available. So if you're going to be in Shanghai on April the 19th, maybe get in and buy a ticket now. So yes, the racing is coming up, but that's not till next month. I don't know what's going on. Maybe we're going to hear something about a movie being released. I keep hoping. Anyway, I hope you're all well. Oh, there's one more thing I wanted to do. This is not really important to anybody except me, but guess what I got during the week? This is something that I have been wanting for ages, and I have a Chinese friend, and she was very kind and brought me back a bottle when she went home for New Year's, and she's just come back to Australia, and she brought me, and I've used it twice, and every time I put it on, I'm like, oh, is this it's too precious to use, but I'm using it because my friend told me I had to, because she bought it for me and it was a gift and I had to use it. So there you go. Okay, enough of that. We're going out with a little bit of footage of yibo in Paris that yibo Official put out last night. Hope you're all well, and I hope you have a wonderful Wang Yibo Wednesday.